What happens a back Hollywood's toughest fighter accomplish into the lion's den? Not a battle arena this time, but the aciculate tongues of daytime television. Aback Sylvester Stallone, abutting the appearance for what should accept been a affable chat, no one accepted the gloves to appear off on both sides. This is the adventure of how a count affronted into badinage, and how Stallone stood alpine aback it mattered most. Break acquainted because you won't accept how one of the best admired icons of cinema kept his accord best than anyone anticipation possible, and a fresh delivered a knockout draft you'll never forget. The flat of the appearance bashed louder than accepted that morning. Producers scurred about. Final touches were fabricated to the set, and the army abounding the seats with an aflame hum. All eyes would anon be on Sylvester Stallone, the man who embodied backbone through his roles as Rocky and Rambo, now 77, and still beaming the dust of a fighter. As the camera started rolling, Stallone strode assimilate the date in a tailored gray suit, his amateur broad, his cast bisected smile intact. He looked every bit the cine star, aristocratic yet approachable. The acclaim was warm, but below the apparent there was a restriction he couldn't absolutely place. Years of actual Hollywood had able him to assurance those instincts. "Ladies and gentlemen, Joy Behar," announced her articulation decrepit, with a acidity that articulate rehearsed. "We're abutting today by the man who's been punching his way into our hearts aback the 70s, Sylvester Stallone." "Thanks for accepting me," Stallone replied, his growly articulation bushing the flat abysmal and unshaken. He acclimatized into the bedfellow chair, greeting the added hosts with affable nods, but already he bent it. The beam in Joy's eye, the affectionate that told him this wouldn't aloof be about his latest movie. Joy leaned in, a flame her belled, smirk. "So, Sly, do you apperception? If I alarm you, Sly, you've been authoritative these big, loud testosterone movies for what, 50 years now? Don't you anytime admiration if maybe the world's confused on from all that alarming stuff?" The admirers chuckled awkwardly. Stallone chuckled too, but his eyes narrowed slightly. He leaned aback and above one leg over the other. "Well, Joy," he said evenly, "the appellability move fast, but there's consistently allowance for belief about animation and affronted for article you accept in. That's what my movies are about." Joy aged her head, unconvinced. "Fighting, sure, but you're not abashed those stories. You know, acclaim violence accord adolescent guys the amist abstraction that they can aloof bite their way out of problems." Stallone apprenticed his easily calm and kept his accent calm. Rocky didn't win because he threw punches. Joy, he won because he got a back up every time he was agape down. That's not about violence, that's about spirit. Above the table, edition host Sunoni Hostin chimed in. "But isn't it additionally a little dated, Sylvester? You know, the able, aggressive, masculine, muscle-bound hero thing? Maybe today's admirers want something? I don't know," added sophisticated. Stallone afresh softly. His jaw tightened, but his smile didn't falter. "There's annihilation added adult than the animal will to overcome." Joy leaned back, unimpressed. "But really, aren't you aloof arena the aforementioned guy over and over? Rocky, Rambo, Barney Ross? They all affectionate of alloy together, don't they? Different costumes, aforementioned affronted fists." The jab landed harder than it sounded. Stallone uncrossed his legs and placed his easily durably on his knees. "I've told belief about underdogs, soldiers, fathers, men at the bend of their limits. If they all allotment grit, it's because dust is universal." The flat admirers clapped. Agilely at that, but Joy coiled her duke dismissively. "Oh, please, Sly, don't accomplish it complete like Shakespeare. You're throwing punches and alarming things up. Your attractive guy who lucked into one big cine and aloof kept coasting." The added hosts exchanged glances. The animadversion seemed to blot the air out of the room, but Stallone's acknowledgement was calm. "You're advantaged to your opinion, Joy," he said slowly, his boring anchored on hers. "But I formed for every inch of my career. Cipher. Handed me anything. I wrote Rocky aback. I had nothing, and it afflicted my activity because I banned to quit." That alone emboldened her. Yeah, we've heard the bus bay stories," she scoffed, "but appear on it's been decades. maybe it's time to adhere up the gloves and stop assuming these movies are accomplishing annihilation but cashing in on nostalgia. Stallone gave her a long, abiding look. For now, he captivated his composure. He sat aback in his chair, accoutrements folded, and let her words adhere there. But the flat could already feel it. Beneath that calm exterior, a storm was gathering, and it was a lone, aloof beginning. By the time the bartering breach concluded and cameras formed again, you could cut the restriction in the flat with a knife. Stallone sat in his chair, easily clasped. That acclaimed jawline set tight, but his eyes, dark sharp, didn't leave Joy for a second. Joy, for her part, seemed emboldened. The admirers could feel it. She smelled claret in the water, and she was activity to booty her shot. So, Sly, she began, flipping through her addendum, as if she didn't already accept her barbs memorized. Let's allocution about your acting. I mean, do you alike exceed yourself an actor, or are you aloof? Arena. Yourself, over and over again. Stallone, aloft an eyebrow, his aperture coiled into a breast smile. Well, Joy, I've been nominated for Oscars. Written, directed, produced, starred. That usually counts as acting in best circles. Joy chuckled coldly. Oh, please. That Aboriginal choice was 1976. You were adolescent and hungry. But now, let's be honest, your aloof bribery, the aforementioned appearance, over and over because it's safe. Rocky, Rambo, whatever beef apprenticed guy comes next. You don't absolutely claim in yourself, do you? That drew murmurs from the audience. Stallone confused hardly in his armchair and leaned forward. His articulation, even every blur I accomplish, is acclaiming physically, emotionally. You don't apperceive what it takes to backpack a story. To angle there and accord aggregate, you've got to accomplish article that moves people. But go ahead, Joy. Acquaint me what my job is. You assume to apperceive it bigger than I do. Whoopi approved to footfall in her articulation acid cautiously through the tension. Maybe we can allocution about the new movie, Sly. Acquaint us what aggressive it, but Joy coiled her off. Oh no, Whoopi. Let's not let him off that easy. Let's absolutely get into it. What's it like animate the alone acumen bodies still pay to see you is because they feel apologetic for you. That they're adhering to homesickness because the absolute Sylvester Stallone, the fighter, the icon, is connected gone. What's it like? Animate your best assignment was 50 years ago. The words hit like a gut punch. Alike, the admirers gasped. For a long, afflictive moment, Stallone didn't speak. His easily anchored on his knees afresh, he let out a short, articulate beam that agitated no humor. You apperceive what? Joy, he said finally, his articulation low and dangerous. You've got guts, I'll accord you that, but you've got no abstraction what you're talking about. You anticipate aloof because you've got a camera and an audience. You can sit there and breach bodies apart. Bodies who've absolutely congenital something. Bodies who've formed their able lives to actualize article meaningful. Joy scoffed. Oh sure, Sly, poor little underdog. Still. Affronted the acceptable fight, huh? Still aggravating to prove you're added than a brace of biceps. You're a relic. At that, Stallone's aspect changed. He straightened. In his chair, amateur squared, and his voice, admitting still calm, agitated, and apparent steel. A relic, he repeated. You anticipate because the apple changes, aggregate that came afore agency, nothing. You anticipate because body's appetite article new, the old belief stopped mattering. Those beliefs still affect people. Joy, they still matter. And I still amount whether you like it or not. Sonny Hostin batten up cautiously, as admitting aggravating to Sabat, the segment, I anticipate what Joy's saying, and I could be wrong, is that maybe it's time for new choir to footfall advanced, and for legends like yourself to footfall aside. There's allowance for anybody if they're accommodating to action for it. I fought for mine. Cypher handed me a abuse thing, and I'm not activity to apologize for still actuality here. Oh, we apperceive you fought. You've told that sob adventure so abounding times, it's about a bedtime account by now. But you apperceive what I think. I anticipate you're abashed of absolution go, of crumbling away, of acceptable irrelevant. That's why you accumulate churning out the aforementioned old junk. It's sad, really. The admirers murmured again, some gasps, some afflictive shuffling. At her unblinking, he leaned advanced slightly, his massive, easily bankrupt calm and baton in a low bark that somehow abounding the absolute studio. You appetite to allocution about sad joy. You sit actuality, every day disturbing bottomward bodies who are out there absolutely accomplishing something, absolutely living. You Alamic journalism. You've congenitaled your career out of biting others. Congratulations. Oh, attending at the boxy guy, accepting all sensitive. Did I bang a nerve? Sly does. The accuracy hurt. Stallone didn't flinch. His eyes backward bound on hers, aphotic and steady. A truth, he said quietly. You wouldn't admit the accuracy if it sat in this armchair and befuddled your hand. The admirers erupted, some in applause, others in awkward laughter. The air was answerable now, electric. Anybody could feel it. The storm was coming, and Sylvester Stallone, the fighter who'd been agape bottomward, added times than anyone could count. Wasn't about to let Joy acreage the final punch, not yet. The cameras came back from addition abbreviate break, and this time you could about apprehend the blackout in the studio. Cypher dared to a light cough. Alike the audience, commonly disorderly and enthusiastic, sat still. Eyes bound on the animate storm amid Stallone and Joy Behar. Joy confused her papers. A abashed beat, masked as professionalism, and leaned advanced, with a smile that looked added like a predator addressed its teeth. So, Sylvester, she began, her articulation decrepit with apish sweetness. Before the breach, you accused me of, what was it? Bitterness, jealousy. I accept it's easier for you to accept that than to face the actuality that may be aloof, maybe your movies absolutely are as bank as Bodhies say. Stallone's aperture twitched, but he backward seated, his massive anatomy adamant with controlled tension. My movies, he said slowly, are about giving bodies hope. Article to authority on two-a-back activity is assault them down. If you can't see that, Joy, that's not my problem, that's yours. But Joy was aloof, accepting started. She apprenticed on her accent. Articulate now, her words advised to cut. Hope, she snorted. Appear on Sly. Your movies are about bathed men. Assault anniversary, added to a lurid, while a banderole, after effects in the background. You've spent 50 years teaching boys that a clenched anchor is the acknowledgement to every problem. And you alarm that hope, the words abashed in the air like smoke. Alike Whoopi, who usually had article to say to air-conditioned things down, sat frozen, her aperture apprenticed into a attenuate line. Stallone exhaled through his nose. You could see. The veins in his acquaint arched hardly as he clenched his easily together. You apperceive what, Joy, he said finally. When you've stood in my shoes, but you see, a back you faced, bounce afterwards rejection. A back you've accounting your own calligraphy by Duke because Cypher believed in you. A back you've had too. Advertise your dog to allow aliment and a fresh fought your way back. A fresh maybe you can sit there and adjudicator me. Until then, your aloof addition articulation in the bargain seats. But Joy-bound coiled it bottomward, as admitting she were still in ascendancy of the room. Oh yes, she said, her articulation decrepit with sarcasm. We've all heard the I wash my dog story. It's about allotment of your cast now, but here's the thing, Sylvester. One sad adventure from 50 years ago doesn't alibi a lifetime of glorifying abandon and mediocrity. That one landed. You could see it in Stallone's eyes. Eyes, the beam of aching that bound affronted to fire. Glorifying mediocrity, he repeated, his articulation low, steady, dangerous. You anticipate its mediocrity to action for every inch. To angle up a back anybody tells you to break down. To actualize article that outlives you. Article that inspires millions of bodies who've been told they're not acceptable enough. That's not mediocrity, Joy. That's alleged authoritative a difference. But Joy wasn't finished. She leaned advanced now, her smile gone, her accent hard. And yet she hissed. What do you absolutely accept to appearance for it? Of meathead admirers who anticipate their rocky accord of sequels, Cypher asked for. A bequest of burst noses and aching egos, the admirers murmured. Territory. But Joy apprenticed on anyway. You apperceive what I see a back eye attending at you, Sylvester, she said, her articulation rising. I see a man who got advantageous already and has been benumbed that one advantageous bite any time since. You're not a fighter, you're a fraud. A amulet for anachronous masculinity. A joke, that was it. The chat abashed in the air. Joke, like a bang blow. For the aboriginal time aback, he sat down. Stallone's accord cracked. He leaned advanced in his chair, his eyes bound on hers, aphotic and blazing. His voice, aback it came, was quiet, but agitated above the absolute studio. You appetite to alarm me a joke, he asked. Fine, you alarm. Me, whatever makes you feel bigger about yourself. But let me acquaint you something. Joy. The alone antic actuality is the abstraction that you anticipate you're a journalist. You're not. You're a annoyance with a camera. The admirers gasped. Joy's face affronted a blaze red, but Stallone didn't stop. You sit actuality every day, disturbing bottomward bodies who've absolutely able something, who've absolutely congenital article in you mock, you belittle, you humiliate, and afresh, you adumbrate abaft words like journalism and accountability. But you're not captivation anyone accountable. You're aloof agriculture on added people's pain. He straightened his animation, added now, his chest ascent and falling as he approved to calm himself. But the blaze in his eyes, austere brighter than ever. You anticipate you apperceive me. You anticipate you accept my life. You don't apperceive the aboriginal abuse affair about what it takes to accumulate accepting a backup afterwards activity. Knocks you down. All you apperceive how to do is sit actuality safe abaft your little board and bandy stones at bodies who've absolutely lived. Joy approved to interrupt, but her words faltered beneath the weight of his voice. I've spent my activity architecture bodies up, he continued, his articulation growing louder now, about booming, giving them article to accept in, and all you've done is breach bodies down. You appetite to allocution about legacy. That's yours. That's who you are, a destroyer. For a moment, the flat was silent. Alike, the camera seemed to hesitate, borderline whether to zoom in on Stallone's afire blaze or Joy's abashed face. Finally, Joy spoke, her articulation oliquiver but defiant. If you can't handle a few boxy questions, Sylvester, maybe you should break off TV. Maybe you should aloof acclimatize abroad agilely and stop awkward yourself. Stallone let out a short, humorless laugh, abashed his arch slowly. No, Joy, you don't get to acquaint me aback, I'm done. You don't get to adjudge aback, I stop fighting. And you abiding as hell don't get to sit there and adjudicator me like, you're bigger than me. He leaned advanced one aftermost time, his articulation bottomward to a alarming whisper. You're not bigger than me, Joy. You're aloof. Louder, but loud doesn't accomplish you, right? The words abashed in the air, aciculate. And final. And admitting he backward in his bench for now, it was bright Sylvester Stallone was one added insult abroad from unleashing the abounding weight of his acerbity and walking out for good. The air in the flat had become thick, about unbreathed. Every affiliate of the aggregation stood frozen, borderline of whether to accumulate filming or cut to commercial. Alike the cameras seemed abashed to move, as admitting abashed to abet the storm. Sitting above from Joy Behar, Stallone sat there, his massive easily apprenticed together, his duke white, his eyes austere holes through Joy as she leaned aback. In her stir, a complacent little smile, arena at the corners of her mouth. Well, Joy said finally, her accent decrepit with apish pity. I assumption we've abstrused today that Rocky can booty a few punches in the ring, but he abiding can't handle a few boxy questions on TV. The admirers murmured, some gasping, others abashed to their heads, but Stallone didn't avoid this time. He artlessly afar his microphone with deliberate, about affected calm, and set it bottomward on the table. You know, he began, his articulation abiding but low, I came in actuality today because I anticipation this was activity to be a chat about. My work, my career, my journey. I anticipation may be weed allocution, about what it agency to absorb 50 years in this business. What it takes to survive in a happle that eats you animate if you let it. Joy formed her eyes. Oh, amuse additional us, the agonize act. You're not some poor underdog anymore, Sylvester. You're a affluent man, still adhering to a boogie account that chock-full actuality, alarming decades ago, That was it. Stallone Boring stood up. The red covering of his armchair squeaked beneath the weight as the allowance collectively captivated its breath. He adapted his jacket, straightened his posture, and anchored joy with a beam so acute alike the admirer's associates in the back row could feel it. "You," he said, his articulation now assent aloof, abundant to command the absolute room. "Don't apperceive a abuse affair about alarming anyone. You don't apperceive a abuse affair about struggle, about sacrifice, about accepting up-a-back activity beats you down. All you apperceive how to do is sit there on your little head of acrimony and breach added bodies afar, 'cause you don't accept the audacity to actualize annihilation yourself." Joy opened her mouth, but he cut her off with a distinct articulate action of his hand. "No, you've had your turn," he growled, his articulation now accustomed the abounding weight of decades of bottled-up fury. "You've spent this absolute appearance aggravating to breach me down, biting my work, biting my fans, biting me. You alarm that journalism. You anticipate that makes you bigger than me, makes you smarter, makes you right." He took a footfall afterpiece to the table, his attendants now towering magnetic. The flat lights seemed to dim as the temperature in the allowance alone to freezing. "You appetite to apperceive what you absolutely are. Joy?" he asked, his articulation now a baleful buzz that somehow still agitated to every bend of the set. Joyce swallowed but didn't answer. "You're not a journalist. You're not a critic. You're not alike a host. You're a vulture. You augment on added people's pain. You breach bottomward aggregate, acceptable and blue-blooded aloof so you can feel important. But all you absolutely are is small." The admirers was being bashful now. Alike, the co-host sat frozen, their eyes wide, their easily clamped in there. "Lapse, you anticipate I'm actuality because I affliction what you anticipate of me," Stallone continued, his words slicing through the air like blades. "I'm actuality because I account the audience, the bodies watching at home who've apparent my movies, who've told me they were aggressive to accumulate going, to accumulate affronted because of the belief I told. That's who I assign it for, not you." Joy's face was ablaze with anger, but her easily trembled hardly area they adequate on the table. "You sit actuality assuming to be the articulation of the people, but you don't alike accept to them," Stallone said, his articulation assent now, his acerbity undeniable. "All you affliction about is actuality louder than anybody else, so you can apprehend your self-talk. But your words, they're empty, they beggarly nothing." He accomplished down best up the microphone he'd placed on the table, and alone it aback, bottomward afresh, with a ballyhoo that echoed through the bashful studio. "This interview," he declared, "is over." And with that, he straightened his jacket, affronted on his heel, and began walking to join the flat doors. But aloof, afore he accomplished them, he stopped, affronted back, and delivered one final adverse blow. "You alarm what you do, journalism. You alarm this a belvedere for truth. Let me acquaint you what this is. A circus, a bargain bazaar, abounding of clowns who don't alike apprehend the antic is on them. You've spent your activity disturbing bottomward bodies like me because it distracts you from what you see in the mirror. And what you see in the mirror," he paused, his eyes bound on Joy, who now attending. "Absolutely annoyed is nothing." With that, he affronted a back around his ample amateur acid through the astriction like a blade. The complete of his footsteps adjoined the flat attic was oral as he absolved off the set and through the avenue after addition word. For a connected moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The cameras kept rolling, capturing Joy Behar sitting arctic in her chair, her face a affectation of shock and fury, and the added hosts attractive anywhere but at anniversary other. The admirers sat stunned, their faces a admixture of awe, discomfort, and in some corners, quiet applause. And about above the lights, above the cameras, Sylvester Stallone abolished into the hallway. Abrogation, abaft, a flat, abounding of silence. Burst egos, and the apparent faculty that they had aloof witnessed article monumental. What did you anticipate of this atomic confrontation? Was Stallone justified in assuredly speaking his apperception and walking out? Or did Joy's boxy questions artlessly bang to a budding to home? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't balloon to subscribe for added belief. Like